The YouTube live chat poll for today is, have you ever been in a life-threatening situation, yes or no? I talked a little bit earlier in the show about an incident that took place in Louisville just before the show started. There was a semi-truck that was driving over a bridge, and it had careened off the bridge, and it was wedged in a way that the trailer was still attached to the bridge, but the cab of the semi-trailer was off the bridge, hanging, dangling over the Ohio River. First responders, EMTs, the whole 9 yards show up. They rappel down and rescue this guy out of the cab of his car. And I was sitting in my car watching all of this unfold because I was listening to Fox News, and then they started describing this. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to look at this. I have to see this. And it was hold your breath type of stuff. Because the guy who rappelled down gets the guy out. They're wrapped up together. I assume that there's some sort of harness or something that he strapped himself into as much as you could in that situation, but one wrong move and the whole thing could dislodge. You don't know how much support is left in a semi-truck hanging off the side of a bridge, but what a scary, scary situation for that truck driver that ended up with him being able to put his feet back on that bridge, being saved by the first responders that showed up. So we want to know from you, have you ever been in a life-threatening situation? I probably have been in more than one life-threatening situation, but the number one I can think of is when I was a seventh grader. We were driving up. It was, I guess it would have been 1997. And is this my chair? Is this my normal chair? It would have been 1997, and we were driving from Madison County up to Chicago for the Lutheran High State Basketball Tournament. I was playing in the state basketball tournament for the Lutheran grade school that I went to. And when we were driving up there, we got into a car accident. An animal ran out in front of us. For the record, hit the animal. Don't swerve. We swerved. And our van went to the right. The overcorrection to get back onto the highway popped both left tires. And we rolled the Ford Aerostar van that we were in. Some of the truck drivers who had stopped to help us afterwards said we rolled, I think, 5 to 8 times. Woo. And my whole family was in there, and my whole family survived. We all had our seatbelts on. In the 90s, we didn't all wear our seatbelts all the time. In fact, we would go on vacations, and we would remove from the middle row in the van the middle bench and leave it at home and just spread out blankets on the floor. So if we were driving to Florida or Myrtle Beach or something like that, that you would just lay on the ground, you'd play your Game Boy, you'd take naps. That's just wild to me. And it was not uncommon. People talk about lying in the back of a station wagon and looking.
Yeah, we did that exact thing.
Yeah. It just was a different time.
Station wagon, yep.
But we rolled the vehicle. I have a scar on my head from, it's probably about 1.5 inches long, right on the top of my head from where my head made impact with the hanger little notch thing that was on there. So when we turned over, my head hit it, and the screw on that thing sliced my head open. And that was it. That was the extent of my injuries. There were cuts, bruises. We were so sore afterwards. I have some legitimate, like actual real PTSD, especially afterwards. It was hard to get back in a vehicle. I remember getting into the ambulance and looking up on the side of the ambulance, and on the wall was like all of these surgical scissors, scalpel, like all this stuff was up there. And as you're moving, they would kind of move because they were like hooked up there. And the last vehicle I was just in had just spun in a bunch of rolling circles. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what happens if we do that in this car?
Oh, yeah.
And I remember going into the emergency room, and I like being on the stretcher going in and just seeing like the tiles on the ceiling because I was in a neck brace, couldn't move my neck. And I remember the first responders being there and taking care of us, and we were all, you're in absolute total shock. But I mean, man, God put his hands around my family that day, and we all lived to tell about it. There wasn't a broken bone, let alone a life lost or anything. My parents said that when they went back to, you can go, find the vehicle at the junkyard to see if there's anything still in the vehicle that you want to claim. And they said that where I was sitting, they could see on the clothes hanger hook that my hair had wrapped around that. So when my head had hit it, it pulled out some of my hair.
Oh, wow.
Which is how we knew where I had hit my head.
Right. Wow. Yeah, those are crazy stories. I have an accident one too, but honestly, the first thing I use the word honestly.
Yeah.
The first
TBH.
thing, the first thing I thought of when I read the question, "Have you ever been in a life-threatening situation?" It wasn't one of those big, oh my gosh moments. It was a very slow progression for me of cystic fibrosis when I was in my mid-20s to late 20s, and it was the life-threatening situation.
Let me ask you an ignorant question. When you were born, did you know you had CF?
So I was born in 81. There was the everybody who's old enough. 1881.
Yeah.
Everybody who's old enough remembers the big snow of 82.
Yeah.
I don't, because I was 2 months old or whatever. But that snow trapped me in the hospital in Granite City. I think it was Granite City. I don't know. This is what I'm told. Because I think I was trapped in the hospital for a number of extra weeks because they were already like, something's up with this kid. They had to do a bunch more tests. And because I was in the hospital longer, they were able to keep me longer and figure out, oh, this kid's got cystic fibrosis. Because at the time, it was a lot tougher to find out. Now you can do genetic testing. Back then, they basically had to do sweat tests.
You would know in utero now.
I think you can know. I don't know if you will know right away, but you can if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was not as... I couldn't gain weight as a baby. So they were trying to figure out why, and they eventually determined it must be cystic fibrosis. But it wasn't until I was older, in my mid-20s, that I started to be... So I was in a sketch comedy group in my mid-20s, and I remember traveling to Chicago to shoot some sketches that I had written, thinking, this might be the last time I get to do this.
Wow.
Because it was getting pretty bad where I couldn't... And you'll hear me even here... I'll be talking and I got to stop, clear my throat. It just happens. But I'm so much better now.
Went over real well during COVID.
Oh my gosh. I'm not kidding. I almost said honestly again.
Honestly.
I almost got a shirt that said, it's not COVID, it's cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to not have to tell everybody I'm not contagious, because CF is not contagious at all. It's genetic. So there's nothing I can do about it. But they did, right at that time in my mid-20s when it was written really bad, an amazing medicine didn't even come out to market. It was being tested. And so this is like part of my life testimony, is that they did a trial of that medicine. Unbelievably, one of the cities they picked was St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievably, I qualified for it, which is not everybody. I mean, the CF population is not small. Compared to the population of the United States, it's small. But it is still a pretty big population as far as a disease goes. So you had to qualify for the study. Then, once you got in the study, it was double blind. So there was a high likelihood that you would be on a placebo. I knew from the first day I got on that thing, I'm like, nope, I'm not on the placebo. And the doctors even told me, you can't tell us that. We're not supposed to know.
Yeah.
And in fact, you don't actually know, but I could tell just from getting on the medicine instantly that I had energy and things were different. And that was my mid-20s, and it was such a godsend. And by the way, only at that time, 5% of the CF population could qualify for that medicine. Now they keep adding more and more percentage to where I think it's up to about 70 to 80% of the CF population.
Are you comfortable saying what the medicine is?
Yeah, it's called Kalydeco, but it's the drug that affects everybody, like the whole population, is called ivacaftor. And it was such a breakthrough for the CF world that I got to be a part of that very first one. And it was so amazing because I really don't know if I would have been here if I hadn't been a part of that first one, or I might have had such damage to my lungs by the time we got there that I don't know if I could be doing this.
Other than the like mucus buildup in the lung issues, do you have things right now? It compromises your immune system, right?
Yes.
So other
it just
than
makes
that,
it harder to get over colds and stuff.
Is there anything else that you're dealing with now that is part of CF other than that?
Not really. I mean, it affects, it mainly affects your lungs and your mucus. It also affects your digestion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to take pills with almost anything I eat, except for sugar. Isn't that funny? So I digest sugar real well. And vegetables, which I'm like, who cares about those?
Yeah.
But
Vegetables taste like sad.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just avoid them because I'm a happy kind of guy. But I do have to take pills with almost everything I eat. That's the other main side effect of CF.
Yeah, that story is such an amazing story that you were blessed in that way. And honestly, after you do a medical test like that, all the people who follow who are blessed because
Yeah.
of the study that you were able to participate in. Leah's in here. Leah, have you ever been in a life-threatening situation?
Well, when you asked me this in the private chat, I said not a normal or specific one, but similar to Ryan, it's kind of like a medical thing. So I have, I guess the actual term is epilepsy. It's characterized as I have stress seizures. So I've had them since I was 17. I don't know what caused them. We think some concussions I got in my sports caused them, but basically when I get really, really stressed, when I sleep, I have seizures, or I can have a seizure. So I said, not a specific life-threatening situation, but every time I have a seizure technically is a life-threatening
But it can be.
situation. Yeah, situation, because, those can kill you. You might not come out of it. So, thankfully I have every time, but so that's my life.
That's why she has to manage her stress and why she's so healthy.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I take such good care of myself.
Well, it is important. And I know, Ryan, you've
I'm a picture of healthy.
yes. Yes. Brad, have you ever been in a life-threatening situation?
Yeah. From car accidents to almost drowning to, the big one's the heart attack. The first heart attack really was the one that I didn't really realize. This is the thing with mine. It's like you were talking about that person hanging over, looking down at the water of the Ohio River, and like they're waiting to be rescued.
Or die.
And most of the situations that I've been in, whether it was my life that was being threatened or if I was in the proximity and trying to help somebody with their life, I didn't have time to stop and think about it. But save for that heart attack. The thing about the heart attack that was so strange and you were talking about remembering riding in the ambulance. I remember the ambulance ride. I woke up at like 3 a.m. with this horrible pain. And I would say, if you're sitting at home, you're like, I wonder what a heart attack feels like. For me, it was like just below or where your collarbones come together, right there. It felt like there was an alien chest burster trying to push out of my chest. It hurt so incredibly bad. So I woke up. I thought it was gas. I tried to burp. I tried to do some other things, and I woke my wife up. And the only thing I could get out of my mouth was, "I need help." That's all I could say. And so she called 911. 911 showed up with an ambulance. They're like, it's probably just stress. I get in the ambulance. I'm sitting there, and I was doing everything that I could. I wasn't nervous, but I was just trying to do anything that I could to take my mind off of how bad it hurt. So I was looking, trying to guess where the ambulance was on the road, which hospital was I going to, all of this other stuff. And I remember the inside of the ambulance. I remember it being very bright inside, but very dark outside. People just kept tapping me and saying, "We're here to help you." I'm like, I know, I'm trying to be calm for you. I'm going to be completely cooperative. I remember going into the hospital and them saying, "We called it already." And I looked up at the person wheeling me in and I said, "Called what? I'm still here." And like, no, it's a heart attack.
Oh, man. Whoa.
Oh.
Whoa.
You're like, hey!
Wait a minute. I can hear you.
And I wasn't laying flat on a stretcher. I was in a wheelchair. I'm like, guys,
Oh, yeah.
I'm still here. So that was what that was.
He called it.
When they put you under to put a heart cath on, they drug you, but they don't put you all the way out. So I was awake for the entire procedure.
No, thank you.
I remember.
Do they need you to be awake?
Yes, because they need to talk to you and ask you, do you feel that? What do you feel now? And so they would do something. They would go and try to get the little balloon in to expand it, the angioplasty. And I could feel them expand it. And that felt like another heart attack. It would just hit so hard. And I would tense up. And they're like, "We're just trying to help." I'm like, "I'm not going anywhere. That hurts." And they're like, "Okay." The doctor would be like, "That's me." And so I remember going through all that. But the whole time, I was never really thinking, oh, I could die. I was just like, what is the next thing that I need to do?
Did you think
to help
about it
these people?
afterwards?
Yes, a lot. I was like, wow, that was really serious and that was really bad. I could have died. So that is my biggest, life-threatening experience. And
You made a physical change in your life after that. Did that change your mindset?
no, well, yeah. Yeah, I guess it would. I wouldn't say from a spiritual standpoint. I was already involved in church, and I was a Christian at the point, and that was, I think that's where I would explain that peace that came over me during that moment. But just looking at life, it made me enjoy every moment. It's like, just whatever it is, just live in that moment and enjoy that, and then whatever the next one's going to be is going to be. You know, I learned that I can't prepare for everything. I can't be in charge of everything. But I do know that I am in a position where God has got me, and I don't have to worry about what might be, because whatever it is, it's His will, and it will be done, and it will work to the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purposes.
Well, I should also mention Brad's a pastor. Brad is also a pastor. We want to hear your stories. There's a lot of them that are coming in right now. We also have an Ask Me Anything coming up next. So please send your questions to us on the Annie Frey YouTube live chat. Chris said, yes, I almost died in a hotel room in San Diego, was there for business, and got really sick to where I had sepsis, barely made it to the lobby for them to call an ambulance. Our friend Wavy said, I had two that I'll share. Number one, driving down I-64 and almost had a head-on with a wrong-way driver. Did a split-second lane change. And second, he tangled with an 18-wheeler, totaled the car, but wasn't hurt. We'd love to hear from you and your story. And, of course, if you have ever been in a life-threatening situation and you're here to talk to us about it, we're happy that you are, and we can share your story as well.